Hey, everybody. Hey,
Mm.
thanks for joining me. I am Arakia Yehuda. This is Unapologetic Truth Channel with Arakia. And we're going to have another conversation. This is a very, very special one because I have my wonderful, beautiful auntie, my real life auntie, y'all. Not play. This is my real auntie. um, my auntie Anita Wills, activist, author, genealogist. We're going to have a wonderful conversation about genealogy. And she has a channel, and she'll be talking more about her channel. Anita Talks History and Genealogy.
Right.
And I'm going to fall back and introduce you to my auntie, my auntie. Hallelujah. Hey, auntie.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well. How about you?
I'm doing very well. I'm so glad to
Good.
see you.
You too. You too. I'm so glad that you could make
Mhm.
time for us to talk. And I'm just so excited. I'm beaming y'all. I'm beaming. Y'all see me cheesing. So, all right. Well, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about um how you got started in this whole um genealogy journey, and tell
Right.
them about your channel.
Yes. Uh, it's a long story of how I got started, but growing up with my mother in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, uh, she was a stay-at-home mother. My dad was working, and so she was in the house with, there were seven of us, seven kids, and a lot of the times, we were her company. She would be in the house, and in order to keep us in order, especially in the winters, we would sit around a stove, a potbelly stove, to keep warm, and she would tell us stories to keep us, you know, from getting on her nerves. Um, but I'm the oldest daughter. There's four brothers that are older than me, and so around 8 or 9 years old, I was in the kitchen. I had to go in the kitchen with my mother because in our kitchen, everything was done in the kitchen. The cooking, the sitting, eating the meals. So she started teaching me how to prep for the meals. So I had to do the boring stuff. You know, she taught me how to measure, for her baking, how to how to prepare foods. I had to do all that. And then I had to wash dishes. And so, it would get, it was a long process, especially on Sundays. Those were the special days when we had special meals. And that's when she would start telling me stories because she could see I was bored. And she started telling me about our ancestors. One time it was winter time and we were in the kitchen and I heard something like sleigh bells. I heard this and I was like, "Mom, do you hear that? Those sleigh bells." She said, "Oh, that's just my cousin. That's just cousin. I forgot his name. His last name is Jones." But she said, "Oh, he has this like a sleigh. He made a sleigh. They're in Urshelden, and they have a farm and they're blacksmiths, and so he had a sleigh. He had made a sleigh like Santa Claus sleigh, and he was coming through, and I could hear it, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that we had relatives there. And then she started, oh yeah, that's Aunt Ida's son. That's and so she started telling me stories about who our ancestors were because he was on my mother's side of the family. That was the Roos, and so she was telling me about how the Roos had got here, had come to Coatesville, after the Civil War, and that he had been a slave. His mother was a slave, and his father was the white man who owned her, and he was a slave in in uh, in Georgia. You know, when they were doing in Savannah, Georgia, and when I don't know if you heard about it in history classes, but Sherman marched through Georgia. He had a march through Georgia, and he was going to burn Georgia to the sea during the Civil War. And I did not know that the 54th Massachusetts was with him, because the 54th Massachusetts is the one that was featured in Glory. That's if you ever heard of the movie Glory. And the 54th Massachusetts, after their leader was killed, their colonel, he was killed in a battle. They continued on with General Sherman. So when you're watching the 54th Massachusetts, it ends with the killing of their of the colonel. He's from Massachusetts, and you know, but I did not know that we had ancestors in the 54th Massachusetts. And so come to find out that my mother's uh, my mother's my grandmother's mother, her brother, Walter Samuel Penn, was in the 54th Massachusetts under General Sherman. So General Sherman, not General Sherman, yeah, he was under General Sherman, but he was under Colonel, I keep forgetting his name, from Massachusetts. But so he had joined, Walter Samuel Ruth had joined, and I just recently found out we had another uncle that was in the Civil War from in the 54th Massachusetts. So there were two uncles, great uncles, who were in the 54th Massachusetts. One of them was out of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and the other one, he was, at the time he joined, he was in Columbia, Pennsylvania, and they they served with Frederick Douglass's sons, Charles and Lewis Douglass. And not only were they in the Civil War, we had great uncles, two, we had great uncles who served in the Civil War out of Chester County. Uh, that's the Martin. His name is William Penn Martin. He served in the 45th First um, United States Colored Troop out of Chester County, not the 41st. Anyway, he served out of Chester County. The 41st United States Colored Troop out of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I had two great great grandfathers in the Civil War, Uriah Martin and Henry Green. So they were in the Civil War. All these people from Mom's family were in the Civil War. And I thought, oh, when I go to school and I look through the history books, I want to see them. I have never seen anything. I didn't know anything about who was in the 54th Massachusetts United States Colored Troops until the movie Glory came out, and they really didn't mention the specific names. They had the characters in the movie, but it wasn't no specific names. But she was telling me about that.
Yeah.
She told me about the all about this history. But she's the one that was telling me, oh, we're native. And I was like, where from? She said, from here. She said, my ancestors were the Indians that were from around here. And they and I said, well, what tribe did they belong to? She said, well, great grandmother Tamsin Page, she was Mohawk. So they were Mohawk. And then there were and Henry Green, my ancestor from Lancaster County. Those people were Indians. They're Susquehanna, Conestoga. They're all mixed with the different tribes because of the constant moving around. And they were always being hunted, and they were always being like Henry Green, and our ancestor from the Welsh Mountains. They were always going up there, arresting him and putting him in jail. Even after he served in the Civil War, he was like in his 60s the last time they arrested him and put him in jail. And they would just go up. And why were they doing that? They were doing that because they owned land, because they were on their own land as indigenous people. And the colonizers, the people that were in, because this is up in the mountains, and the people that were in the lowlands wanted their land. And it was sad to me when I went back there, and they had moved up there with $1 million homes. One of the graveyards of our ancestors, they moved the headstones, and encroaching on the lands, and they didn't want me writing about my ancestors because they had put out so many lies on the people up in the Welsh Mountains, who the original people were. And and I said, I have to, tell this truth, because my mother, although she was telling me that, nobody else wanted to talk about who we were. We had to endure the fact of letting these people who were immigrants define who we were as a community, where we could go. So she was telling me that. And then, when we moved out here to California, it was so far away. And like the stories that my mother would tell me, if I went out and told even other relatives, they would tell me, don't talk about that. Don't say that. Because they wanted, but the stories that we were hearing were humiliating. Ne'er-do-wells. They didn't contribute nothing. Even great-grandfather Ruth, great-great-grandfather Ruth, he's your great-great-grandfather, it's my great-grandfather. But he was brought here by the 54th Massachusetts. That's how he got here. When he was in Savannah, his father, the white man that owned him, sold the children that he had with the mother, and then sold the mother to Hilton Head Island. So great-grandmother Leah, she was sold away from her children. And by the way, she wasn't even brought here until 1830. She was brought after it was illegal to sell African slaves in the United States. So they took her they kidnapped her. She said, we were panning gold. We were up panning gold, and the slavers came and took us. They took the children. And I'm thinking they probably killed the parents, because they weren't just out there. The children weren't just out there panning gold. There was people there watching them. But they brought the children and they took them to Bermuda, and that's where they were seasoned, in Bermuda, and then they were sold to South Carolina as Caribbean slaves. So my family thought that she was a Caribbean. They didn't know she was African, and but she told my grandmother, Grandmom Leah Martin, and her siblings, I'm from Africa. I'm from Guinea. I'm not from here. She told them the whole story. And in 2000, I have written to the Guinean embassy, to the embassy in Guinea, and there was a woman who was the wife of the President Condi, that contacted me and said, we have been looking for them. We're doing research to find out about them. And then she contacted me and she said, yes, they were taken. Those children were taken, and I traced them to Bermuda. They were taken to Bermuda, and then sold in South Carolina as slaves. That's what she confirmed for me. You see what I'm saying? And but this is all began with my mother telling me that, and everything that my great grandmother told us was true. And she didn't have a lot of people that wanted to listen to her. They didn't want her saying that because we can never criticize our enslavers, the colonizers. We're never supposed to say anything about what the atrocities that they committed against us. We're just supposed to live with it and let them pretend that they are liberators
hmm
or heroes.
You know, you know what? One thing as you're speaking about this, it just reminds me of how important it is to to maintain oral tradition.
Yes,
It is so vital that that carries on, and we're losing that. We are
right,
losing that fundamental element that has carried us through generations. Like it is so important, and we are losing that vital connection because of that. We're not bridging the gap. We're not bridging
right,
the age gap and things like that. We're not doing that enough, and we're letting
right.
things go. And it's to our detriment that we're doing that.
Yeah. And and when I would say it and out loud or speak of it, I was being told to be quiet. That's just Vivian. That's just your mother telling tales. They didn't want me speaking of it, but but it's okay to speak of Jesus, who is 2,000 years ago, how he was treated. Look how he was treated. And if we be honest about our stories, we will see that they never stopped treating the descendants of Christ, the people, the chosen people of Christ, any different. That they have continued, they have not apologized for it. They rewrote the Bible and they have continued. And and we have continued to give them cover by not being honest and not sharing our story, you know. And so
Some of that is
all I'm
Stockholm
saying,
too going on, though.
right,
You know, it's still that lock on our minds.
yes,
So, but I'll
yes,
let you continue.
that whatever accomplishments we have, we're not important. We're not important. And for them to say, "Oh, you're not important," they're trying to block us from Creator, from God. You know what I'm saying? They don't want us to see ourselves as blessed people. And I refuse to bow down and accept that because I know that I and mine are blessed beyond measure in many ways.
Yes, we are
I don't
fearfully and
believe that.
wonderfully made. So
Yes,
yes, absolutely.
because I don't.
Yeah.
I just,
So,
my goal in life isn't to roll around in money and power. That's not my goal. I think people that do that are sad, because it doesn't. You can't eat money. Money don't make you happy, you know. And we have the power of Creator. We have the power of God in our lives, and that's what people who are not evolved, they don't have it. They don't understand it, and it's like hard to, it's hard to explain it to someone who doesn't have the ability to understand it. And so my mother, telling me that story, it got me, and people saying, "Oh, that's just Vivian, talking or telling tales." I said, "Oh, I'm going to prove it." Or my creator said, "You need to prove it. You need to write this down. You need to, document it." And that's what I started doing, especially after we came to California. So after we came to California, my mother was, staying with me, and she was writing down. She got this letter, and it said, "Oh, your great grandfather, Robert Penn IV, he was a prominent minister in Philadelphia prior to the Civil War." And I took that letter and uh, went up to the Mormon church in Oakland. There's a huge Mormon church in Oakland, and they have a genealogy library, and that's where I began my research at the Mormon church. And I used to go up there at least once a week, and I began looking at records like census records. That was the first thing I looked at from where my mother said that our people were, like census records for Pennsylvania, census records for Virginia, for South Carolina, um, and just and I might look all day and only find a couple of census records, but if I looked on those records, I could see that there was things that I could, like I would see the county, the city they lived in, the county they lived in, the state they lived in, and run from there. So that is how I got started. And I would be the only person of color in that library. And I would be the youngest person most of the time. A lot of the people back then were just elderly white people, and they were doing it. They were, it was a leisurely like hobby for them. So I would be up there, the only person of color. And the librarian got to know me. She was very helpful. If I had a question and I asked her, she would help me. And when the Church of Latter-day Saints, when they started going online, I got a lot of information from them, because they were commissioned by the federal government. They were the reason Ancestry exists today is because the federal government allowed them to copy all of the records from the archives, and open that library. And begin to have the libraries and the books and all that information. They took it, and it was a project of theirs, and they translated it all, and had started their library throughout.
That was
So they had the physical library, and then they started the online library where you could do genealogy research.
that's my question, Auntie. So because I'm like, so how did this start? So why the Mormon church though? Can you speak
They were the
to
only
that?
ones that had the records. They
They're
were the
the
only
only.
ones that had complete records because they got
Why do you
the
think
federal
that is?
government. Huh? I'm sorry. What was your question?
I was asking why do you think that is? But you were about to answer that.
Because this congressman, he was a part of the Mormon church. He was like a prominent congressman from like a senator. I said congressman. I think he was a senator or in the House of Rep, but he went there and they had the project, and they had a contract with the government that allowed them to copy all of the records and to set up what is now in Salt Lake City, Utah, all of the genealogical records and that they have that they had in the archives, and they was also getting stuff from the state archive. They were just they had money from the government to do this, and nobody in our community was asking for anything like that. And I doubt if they would have given them anything like that. Giving them anytime that I have seen our people going and doing that research, they've had to put their own money out to do it. But the government gave them a contract and allowed them to do it because they were, when they first started the church, they wanted to make sure that no people of color were members of, would reach hierarchy in that church. That was their whole thing with the genealogy about who was a European, a white European. That was what that was about, you know.
Yep, there it
And
is, that part.
yeah,
Keep them out. So let's do this to make sure that we have it on record. And it was
yeah,
that big brother type of thing, you know.
yeah, yeah. So they didn't care about me being up there and looking at the records because the entire point of it was to identify who was and was not white. And if they found if you were white or calling yourself white, and they found a mulatto, you was not going to get nowhere in that church. That was just what it was.
It's funny you said that because there's actually someone on YouTube who left that church, and
Mm.
she's Caucasian, and she's exposing them. And that's one of the things she talked about specifically, was how they were trying to keep melanated people of color, they were trying to
Yeah,
keep out of the church. And this is what they were about. She literally
yeah,
spoke to that specifically. So that's just what you're sharing is just more confirmation of that.
yeah. And they
But Mhm.
they what the whole premise of them not accepting people of color is that they want to. I think they know that the white population is only like 9% of the world's population. I think the whole thing about the not only the Mormons but a lot of them, making these young girls uh, pregnant when they're young, 9 and 10 years old, is to keep their race, um, the numbers of their races up. The same thing with them being against abortion. They're not against abortion for us. That whole thing about abortion has to do with them continuing uh, or getting their numbers up here on, you know, throughout the world. Only 9% of the population, but causing 80% of the havoc throughout the world. And
mm,
for them to say that, and when I'm saying them, I don't mean all of them. It's just a radical, the few that are just like a cancer to the race. The ones that are going around giving in Africa, giving African women birth control, try putting stuff in the foods that's, you know, uh, using
like they're
like
doing
forced,
here,
yeah, forced,
they don't
forced
want us.
sterilization.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
about Judah. They like they don't want. They know who we are,
right,
and they don't, just like it was in because I'm always going to take it there,
right,
just like it was in Mizraim or Egypt, when they
yes,
were like Herod was trying to destroy the children consistently.
yeah,
It was population control. But what did the Most High say to Abraham? His seed was going to be uh, beyond the number. Like you see these stars up here, that's what your
yeah,
seed's going to be. And it's
yeah,
still to this day. It's still to this day. So
and
whatever was trying to
yeah,
be done for our bad will always turn around for good,
yes,
because it's written. So
yeah.
hallelujah.
I saw, I saw a news article with, I think it was 60 Minutes years ago. They were in Zimbabwe, and you know, and they were talking to this. doctor and talk about the mortality rate of the babies in Zimbabwe. You know, they were coming off of colonialism, and the people were still, you know, suffering under neo-colonialism. And so, so this African doctor, he asked her, he says, why do they keep having babies? She said, they keep having babies because you all keep killing the babies. And every time you kill one of us, 1,000 of us are born. And I was like, boom. I was surprised they let that be on air. She said, the
Yeah,
more
back
that
then
you kill,
it probably
the
went
more are
down.
being born. That's like they want to
Oh,
be in charge. They want to be God. You're not God. God, Creator, decides. And the poverty that we have been in is a direct result of colonialism and neo-colonialism.
but you
That's what the poverty is.
but you know
That's
what?
what it
Something,
comes
and I have to make sure I say this
from.
too. Just like there's bad folks on their end, our folks got some stuff with us too, because
Yes,
because we have sellouts, that
yeah,
are all about
yeah,
that almighty green more than they are of their own people. So yeah,
yeah,
I had to put that out there too, because some people will try to come for people in the comments and be an
right,
extra, trolling, stay
yeah,
trolling and all of that. But no. It's
yeah.
equal opportunity on both ends of the spectrum.
Oh, yeah, because there's no way that 9% of the world's population could rule as long as they did and do the things that they did without cooperation from some of us, you know. And so they, I call some of the people who have, podcasts, they call them tethers. They want to be tethered to the European. They want to be adjacent to them and thinking that they're going to get some privilege. And yet, the way that I see it is this: I believe some of those people, our sellouts in the community, think that God is not all seeing. I believe they think that, oh, if I'm blessed, I'm this person, I'm blessed, and I can just do whatever I wanna, and I can help these people, and God will continue to bless me. But God, just like God will bless you on the one hand, you will be cursed on the other hand for the things that you did in God's name. Just like those people that you follow and the ones that you want to be like so bad, you will suffer the same fate. You know, anybody that sells out their own community is not going to is going to suffer the same judgment that the people who they're following will suffer.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
they have a God. See, that's the thing. They have who they serve. They're serving
but
their God, their
yeah,
Elohim. So
mhm,
they're doing the bidding of their Father. You know,
yeah,
but they know who we are, and they know who who ordains it all. You know, but
that's
they're still going to
mhm,
do what they do because it is ordained. You know,
yeah,
but in the end, we know who wins, you know.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
hallelujah.
they're
But
like little children who you know how little kids they only they do things for the moment, but they're not looking for the punishment that comes after you do something you're not supposed to do. And I told you not to do that. And this is God. And like they they went into Venezuela and killed innocent people. And so, you know, what you did, and they're all celebrating, but they're not thinking about the morning after that judgment is coming for you because of the atrocities you're committing. And then to call yourself a Christian, you're liars and you're thieves. You're not Christian. You know, it wasn't. You know, it wasn't. It wasn't God that's in their hearts that told them to do what they did to Christ. You know, to Jesus. To you, what in what Bible? The Romans were the ones that crucified Jesus, and they're the ones, and the Greeks that rewrote the Bible. Both of them colonized Egypt, colonized the
But our
motherland, the
people,
homeland.
but Yehuda, you know, the
Yes,
our people sold us out in order for them to do
yes,
that. So,
yes. And
so
they're
it,
still selling us out. Just
it's
like
no,
those, they
it's
were,
nothing new under the sun.
yeah,
Literally, like this word
and
is
did
real
not,
time.
right. And they're still doing it. They're still doing it. Um, they so, because they too, they see it as, oh, I'm gonna get some money. I'm gonna get some fame. Everything that you're getting from doing what you're doing is fleeting. It's fleeting, and you're miserable. And that's why you got to, you you wind up when they get through with you. When Satan gets through with you, they throw you away. It's because they do not want to be around God's people. And so, you know, I'm just like looking at the world from an older, much older person, and seeing how, that creator God never fails. God never fails. And I don't have to wish it on anybody. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, because when it comes down to it, you're going to be in hell in your mind before you leave this earth. And you can see it when people are um, have are living in big mansions and commit suicide, are miserable. They have everything they want as far as money and power, and they just are miserable, And I don't wish
Yeah,
that on anybody, because I did
yeah.
not create this. I'm not the creator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just living my life, and I'm not even
Absolutely.
gonna look back and see if you get
Yeah, we're
your
not supposed to
reward
do.
and
We're
your
not supposed to
punishment.
be rejoicing at anybody's demise. The word is clear on,
Right?
like we're not supposed to be laughing
We're
at
not
somebody
wishing that.
down, any of that. That's called dignity. We're
Hmm.
supposed to keep our dignity, that our Yah given dignity. Absolutely. That's not what we
Yeah.
do. But
Right.
so Auntie, I wanted to ask and maybe segue
Hmm.
into how you actually got started with authoring, how this kind of,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, morphed into um, the author, Anita Wills.
Yeah. Yeah. I was again. My mother. I was home, and I had all these. I had come back because she used to watch the kids while I went to Virginia. And I got all these records, and then I was, you know, um, pulling stuff off the computer, and I had massive, and I had books. People were sending me books, and people were sending me letters. And she looked at my files and she said, "It's time for you to write a book." And and I was like, "Oh, mom, that's a project." And she said, "Yeah, but you got a lot of stuff here. Don't you think you should put that in the book?" And that's when I started my first book. Um, that I didn't finish it until 2004, but she passed in 2001, but she was the inspiration for me starting that book. Um, the Notes and Documents of Free Persons of Color, and and the you know in the meantime, I proved my ancestry, or our ancestry, to uh, the Revolutionary War soldier in Virginia, and that was Charles Lewis. So I was accepted into the DAR in 1998 under Charles Lewis. So that was our Revolutionary War ancestor. And then the other Revolutionary War ancestor was um, is Raleigh Penn. So
And
he's
can wait, and excuse me, Auntie, what is DAR? Because I'm like, I don't want to say it, not the Daughters of the Revolution, right? Can you
yeah, it's the
explain what
daughters
that
of
act?
yeah, it's the Daughters of the American Revolution.
They're not. I thought they
Yeah.
were. Well, maybe I'm getting it mixed up, but I thought they were. They didn't like black, persons of color.
Oh, they
Like,
didn't.
I-
They didn't. But they could
okay,
not.
I was like, wait
They
a minute,
were.
I know I heard of that before.
Yeah, one of the families actually had sued them because anytime you're a nonprofit and you're getting money and resources that our taxes are paying for, you cannot have an organization that excludes people of color. And so, uh, yeah, yeah, we were. I was. Uh, I was accepted into the DAR in 1998, and the lady that helped me, Karen Sutton, she's related to the Penns as well, and she was the one that brought me in to the DAR, and then in that same year, I became a member of the Monacan Indian Nation, and I was using my genealogy records to prove my our our relationship to the indigenous people, to the Native Americans who are in Amherst County, Virginia. You know, and I was, you know, like we that whole thing about. It seemed like there were episodes of, like when I was looking for my relatives who were in the Revolutionary War. There was a whole struggle about that because they were actually in wars, and they weren't just members; they were in battles. And in order to prove them or connect to them, you have to have a battle that they were in. So Ambrose and Charles, are like they served on a ship on the Rappahannock River in Virginia, and then they served in the Battle of Camden in South Carolina, and we had to get the rosters. You had to find the rosters, and they were not helping us. They were not helping me find the rosters, and they were saying, "Oh, you have to find the roster." And then when I did find the roster, and you know, gave them my, turned in my application. Come to find out, they knew. They already had it. They knew who served in the Revolutionary War. The people of color, they knew it. It was the same thing with Raleigh, Penn. Uh, I had to prove, I had to find his roster, but they were not telling me where it was. So I went into this library. It's called the Schwem Library, and it's at the College of William and Mary. And I found the rosters, but the rosters were with um, the their colonels. The colonel that was over the unit. That's where the rosters were, because he, as a white man, he was going to make sure his name, went down as a colonel, and that he had the names of the men who were under him. So and I'm telling you that the intuition, it wasn't nobody telling me this. I would wake up and my intuition would tell me, look over there, go there, do this, talk to that person. And I was just basically following my intuition. But I believe it was the ancestors who were telling me that, oh, you can do this, because I would get up in the morning, and there would be this something that would say, go look in this library or talk to this person. And 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 I followed that, and that's how I went back so far. I mean, we went back to okay, our ancestors are James Monroe's brother. No, James Monroe's uncle, William Monroe Jr. See, every time I found a line, there was a story that came with the line. There's a storyline. Okay, so when I found when I traced it back to George Washington birthplace, our ancestor Mary, her name was Mary Boulding. She was born. I know the exact date she was born, February the 20th, 1730. Okay, her mother was Mary Monroe, and she was serving an indenture to to William Monroe Sr. So that was her mother, Mary. So Mary was raised in a household of the Monroes, and this is President Monroe's grandfather. Well, President William Monroe Jr. was in a relationship with Mary Monroe. They grew up together, and they thought they were married. But they had the baby. The baby turned out to be our ancestor, Mary Boulding. And Mary, was considered illegitimate because it was against the law for a white man and a mulatto to marry. So they took her to court, charged her with bastardy. But then the courts, I think that the Monroes went to court and begged on her behalf, and they dropped the charges against her. But the child could not remain with her. So they took Mary, the child, away. And William Monroe Jr., he left and he went to Ohio. He never remarried. And I don't know what happened to Mary, the mother, but I think she was in Ohio too. I think they stayed together, but they could not take the child. They could not take that child. The child, Mary Boulding, was an indentured servant to George Washington's brother and father. So she was indentured out, Mary Boulding, at the age of 7. And she had to do a 30-year indenture.
Wow. Wow. That's so.
And so when you were indentured, any children that you had were also indentured. And you could not marry while you were in indenture unless they gave you permission. So they were having children and not being married, and the children were being indentured. That happened to her, to Mary. She had Patty, who was our direct ancestor. And Patty was immediately indentured to the Washingtons. And then when she was like 20 years old, she was 21, they gave her as a present to Elizabeth Washington, who was the niece of George Washington. So she was an indentured servant to Elizabeth Washington, and she had, the children that she had were all indentured because they would not give her permission to marry. As long as she was an indenture, they would not give her permission to marry. And then when her children were born out of wedlock or illegitimate, they were indenturing those children out. The men were indentured for 20 years and the women for 30.
Wow.
So they,
Wow.
of course, they don't want us talking about that system.
Sure, of
They don't
course.
want us talking about it. But
Yeah.
they were the ones that were impregnating those women.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's going on, that That's white. That whole whited house history was very real.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
before we get too far in, because
Mhm.
I want to make sure that we address some of the questions
Mhm.
that were given for our conversation, and one of
Okay.
which I knew this would be something that that I would I was gonna have you speak on, um, but how would one go about looking into um, their genealogy? So let me ask you, actually, let me ask you this before I really preface that.
Mhm.
What is your opinion? I know we spoke on it briefly the other day, but what is your
Mhm.
opinion about um, the DNA testing and things of that nature? Because there's people that may be interested in doing that, and I just wanted you to give your thoughts on that before you get into
Mhm.
how would one necessarily get started when with their
Yeah,
own search.
yeah. I've taken, several DNA tests, but before I took the DNA test, I had already written my first book. The DNA test confirmed a lot of the genealogy that I was claiming. Um, but the DNA tests are not preventing. It is not cannot replace you doing the genealogy. Cannot replace you getting those documents. Like we're on Ancestry, and what I do, what I um, stay on Ancestry for, I get information from that. I'm able to access um, birth records and census records, and also uh, meeting people who are cousins, who are relatives, and we have when I took my first DNA test from Family Tree DNA, it come back 87% European and 8% Native and 5% African. So that DNA test is from my mother's side of the family,
Oh,
and it
wait, I'm
was
sorry. Did you say 87%?
European.
That
That
don't even
DNA,
sound right.
huh?
That don't sound right to me. That number sound a little
Yeah.
skewed.
Well, the woman who we're running through the straight maternal line was a mulatto woman. So she was her father. Somebody was a white man, was white. I think it had to be her mother because we're running the maternal lines. And these people were all being mixed. They were all, yeah, there was um, the Lewises, who we are. When we go back, it traces back to Wells, and they were the Llewellyns, LLEW, Llewellyn, LLEWLYN, or something like that, Llewellyn. And they were themselves colonized by the Anglos and the Normans who came into England. So the Welsh were the first people to settle in the Britain in what is now Britain. And when the Normans and the Anglos came in, what they did was kill the men off, and then they impregnated the women. They forced the women to have children with them. The same thing they did when they came here into the Americas. So yeah, that
Yeah.
did not really surprise me. Um,
Um,
Anthony, Uncle Anthony, when he took his,
mm,
it came back 100% indigenous from Colombia, South America.
mm,
Yes, and that was Grandpa Baxter's lines.
mm.
100% indigenous. So the 5% indigenous from mom's line had to do with the people that were here that were impregnated, you know, and they were, when they first came, they were looking at the women. They were mating with the women. I mean, people don't want what. That's what the whole Pocahontas story is about. What they did to Pocahontas, they were doing it, and then after a while, and then they were enslaving the men, and they were enslaving native indigenous people from all over the Americas. And
Yes.
that was
Wow.
before they ever brought any Africans over here. They were
Wow.
enslaving the indigenous people, our ancestors.
So when you did your DNA, and this is me talking, okay? This is
Mhm.
my thought with this. Uh, we live in a different time now,
Right.
obviously, and with all of the um, data breaches and things like that, where
Mhm.
where I mean, it's happened where the compromising has happened with people's
Right.
DNA on the data breaching. So, can is there a better company if somebody is going to do DNA, um, have their DNA tested? Which personally, and this is my opinion, y'all. Okay, don't come for me. This
Right.
is strictly me. I don't I don't feel comfortable. Like I feel like our folks, we got to be careful with that because we don't
Yeah.
know what they're using this information for. But
Yeah.
anyway, if you're going to do that, is there
Mhm.
any companies that are more reputable as opposed to others? Some companies that may not be as popular but are more reputable because they don't have that popularity. Can you speak to any of that?
The fear that we have about them, what they're going to use it for. Guess what? When you go to the hospital, they take your blood. They do DNA tests on you there. There is no way that you're going to get through this life and they're not going to have your DNA. And, so the one, okay, I did African ancestry. Okay. And so did Anthony. It came back 100% European from Spain. That's what that DNA. So when I'm saying that the family tree DNA said it was European, also when I took the African ancestry, instead of saying where we came from in Africa, it came back 100% European from Spain. That's mom's straight line, and so and it goes back like 30,000 or so years. So what was going on? What happened with family tree DNA, which is why I don't really trust them anymore, when it started coming out about them seven sisters, the Eve genes, the family tree DNA was the first one to talk about the Eve gene because all them seven sisters came out of East Africa and populated the world. But now they don't talk about that as much. They were talking about the seven sisters in 2003. I'm Tara. I think there was Euseja, there was, all these seven sisters, but all of them came from Africa, populated the entire world. Like even my brother Anthony, uh, when he took one of them that he took traced the Grandpa Baxter's lines, who are the paternal line, out of the Middle East, out of Africa, out of the Middle East, through Asia, and down through Melanesia, and down through into South America. And so they want to have a phenotype of Native Americans. And that phenotype does not look like us. But if you look at the Aborigines in Australia, they were the first settlers of that region. They say they have been there at least 50,000 years. And you're going to tell me, so they're in Australia. Then there's they were in Melanesia. If you go all of those islands, the Solomon Islands, Hawaii, those people are, Samoans. Those people came out of Australia and populated that entire region. Even in the Philippines, up in the mountains, they have people that are dark skinned and have those broad features. And you're going to tell me that none of those people came into the Americas. What they said was that our grandfather or our paternal ancestors were the first settlers of what is now Colombia, South America. They are the indigenous people. And no, they are, there's so much other information flooding that people don't really want to think about the fact that America is a continent. Turtle Island is a continent. It's not a country. How porous it was back then. There were no borders. People just came in. And people said, tribes, they became tribes. And for them to say that we, the Africans didn't have the capabilities to come there, that's just their speculation. Because what they're saying is that, you people are not going to say you got here, before the ones that we wanted to be here got here, the ones they colonized and everything. But anyway, so that's, that's what the DNA is saying. Whether you all want to take the test or not, I'm in Ancestry because I'm meeting relatives that I didn't know I have on Ancestry. So that's what I like about Ancestry.
Yeah, the world. I just wanted to interject with this though. We have to understand the world had been populated. Even
Yeah,
before the flood came, the entire earth was populated. So,
yeah, yeah.
and that's all I'm gonna say on that. But okay, so ancestry is probably pretty much tried and true for you throughout the years. That's been a constant. Would you
Yeah,
say? Mm-hmm. Okay.
because I'm meeting people who are relatives from from Europe, from the United States. I am also given names of, like, on Ancestry, on Family Tree DNA right now. I've got thousands of people who are my DNA cousins from all over the world. From Europe, I have Native people who are cousins, you know. So I'm not knocking Ancestry, but a lot of it is like when you go on there now, because they've been threatened by this government because they don't like the information they're putting out. They're more, when you go on there, it's not open, that information. Like you're told not to
Basically.
copy the information, but you can, I can talk about it. I have
Mhm.
certificates showing what they found and, what my DNA results were. But, they shut them down because they was talking about stuff that the government didn't want them talking about. Talking about that, we all came from Africa.
Sure. Right. But the truth is coming out. You know what I mean? Like it's out here now, and
In
it's
the
no
beginning,
denying.
it was all Africa until it split, until it wasn't. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? It was a land mass that split, into what we see now. It was all Africa.
Mm.
Most of the,
Wow.
the Europe, you think about, they talk about great floods, but there was also great eruptions. There was also earthquakes. There was the earth splitting, cratering. There was a lot of things going on. And in the beginning, it was just one landmass that split over all these hundreds of thousands of years, you know? And so if you leave North Africa, you go to North Africa, there is a Iberian Peninsula that goes right into Europe. So North Africa connects to Europe. That's why they keep on trying to say that the North Africans are white. They want to make them Caucasian, like they want to make the Egyptians Caucasian. But because
That's
it
another
connects
story
to.
for another time. Yeah, yeah. Woo, yeah. Um,
But
um,
that's the other
and-
thing is they want to label everything. Everybody, you got to be labeled. You got to be this, and you got to
right.
stay over here, and with your tribe,
Yes.
and we're over here. Ain't
Yeah.
nobody,
Classes, all that. Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I just call
Classification.
them
It was
like I
all
see
about
them.
classification. Yeah.
Right.
Um, Let me
Yeah.
ask this other question. Well, it's a few questions. Um,
Hmm.
and so does, okay. So do you help people with their family trees, or give advice on the best ways for them to search it out for themselves? And uh, if you do people's genealogies, what do you charge? What would be a cost for that? Um,
Yeah.
and this commenter is asking, I only have my mom and dad's birth dates and both grandmothers' maiden names. Is that enough to do a search?
Yeah. If you know what city and county, state they were in, and you give me an idea of what year they were there, then I can trace them. I have traced um, one of my biggest projects was these people that were Creole from Louisiana, and I traced them. I would say a good 6 or 7 generations. They went from Louisiana. This beautiful Creole woman. This white man married her, fell in love with her. He came down from Boston. He married her, took her to Texas, and bought a big old spread in Texas. And they had all these children, and the family was very successful. And so I traced them, and they paid me well to trace them. And these are people of color, you know. So when I do that, when I'm working on a project like that, it's confidential. You know, I talk to the family, and I started with what they gave me, which was the names that they wanted me to trace, where these people were, what were. Everybody has a story of, well, I heard this, and we were, and you know, so they gave me the basic information that I needed, and I was able to, you know, trace and get their lineage together. And so, yeah, if they tell me where they were, give me some birth dates and say what everybody has stories. Where do you think they were from? Where did you hear that at? So we converse, and they can if they send it to me, if they ask me what they want me to do, then I can give them a price of what how much it's going to cost, because I have to look at how long it's going to take,
Sure, of
you
course,
know, to
absolutely.
get that done.
And how many would you say? And I mean, ballpark.
Mhm.
How many, since you've been doing this? How many clients, or how many genealogies, ballpark, would you say you've done to date? If you
I've
could say
done
that number.
I was working at I was working at the time that I was doing this. I was working for Ancestry, and that was before they even had their little, you know, Ancestry.com. I was working for them as a independent genealogist, so I did a good 100 or so. You know, some were easier than others.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
so they
that's
would
nice.
send it to me.
Credentials. That's what
Huh?
I was thinking. I was thinking that's nice because you have credentials. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this
I
is
worked
not
for
just a hobby
Ancestry.
or anything like that. Yes.
I was doing at the time. I was, when people were coming to me, they were wanted me to prove to help them with their native ancestry. So I was doing most of the ones that I did were native, but the the Creole people were the most interesting. I really enjoyed doing those lines and found, I was like, wow, they was in Texas and they had this big old ranch and he really loved that little Creole woman.
Wow, that sounds like it's
Yeah,
so interesting. It sounds like it's actually probably like a labor of love. Like it
yes,
to hear to see people's stories and it's almost like, how some of these movies, over time you can see, different love stories and like The Notebook. That was always one that
yeah,
was just one of those. And I just recently was watching Sarah's Oil about the real life story of Sarah Rector and how she,
wow,
11 years old, came to inherit that an oil land
yeah,
that had oil on it. Yes. It was
yeah,
recently in the movie, you
yeah. I
know.
saw it. We saw it.
Yeah, yeah.
My
So,
sisters and I saw it together. So,
yes, yes.
because I
And
heard about her, I heard about
mhm,
her years ago. You
mm,
know, I didn't know her entire story, but I had
mhm,
heard about her. And
yes,
also when they were talking about the one about the native people who were being killed for their land. I forgot the name of it, but out in Oklahoma, there was a movie about that too. But I knew about them. I had heard about them years ago. Yeah,
yes. And she was what the first, well, like one of the youngest millionaires, like at 11, I believe it
yeah,
was. That's how I came across her information about her life on YouTube. And then I said when I saw they were coming out with the movie, I said, wait a minute, that's the story I had just heard about it recently.
yeah,
And I'm like, look at that, you know. Like there's nothing impossible for the Most High Yah at all,
yes, yes,
and so. But anyway, so yeah, and of course, if you can, and I'll put it in the description, your
mhm,
contact information,
right,
for someone that wants to reach out to you in regard to um this project, and maybe if you can
right.
speak to um uh like timing, like are they pretty involved, because it sounds like it's a pretty involved process with doing someone's genealogy. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah,
about that?
yeah. The process is for them to contact me and let me know, give me an idea of what are you looking for, you know, because you could run a line, you know, 7 or 8 or 9 generations, and that by itself is, that's time consuming just to run one line. And they, so when I'm talking to them, I'm finding out what they know. And a lot of times people don't know what they know, and they start talking, and you ask them questions, and then they find out that they know more than they thought they knew. But if you start out with uh, the who are you looking for, where do they live, and what was the city, the county, the state, and and you give me those years, and I will look and see what was going on around the time that your ancestors were there. you know, because a lot of the times, at certain times, we were being moved around. We were being pushed off of our land. And so that's what I do. I get the backdrop and the history of what was going on and see, if they're still there. And and if they're not still there, then finding out where did they go. Because a lot of times, if you're in the South around a certain time, there's a bunch of people that just picked up and left and went north. Like there's people that were in Virginia who are related to us. They got together and they went to Michigan. So then I find, these people, follow them to Michigan and see what I can find out, about who was in the family and what they were doing, because most of the census is back there. If you were a person of color, you had to say what you did for a living, and most of them were laborers or housekeepers and things like that, or keeping house. You had to justify your existence on the census. So, you know, there's a lot of information, more information, because they were keeping tabs on us, you know, and that plays to our benefit.
Yeah, that part. That actually
Yeah.
is, that's a good point. That's a great point, Auntie. That is
Hmm.
a great point. Yeah. The records will be out there, especially during a certain, there may be a little stopgap involved, but then,
Right.
might be a little hiccup, and then it might pick up somewhere else.
Right.
It's
Because
like put,
a bunch of our people from Virginia packed up and left and went to Canada. So I've been in contact with our relatives that are in Canada that left Virginia and went to Canada. They were free and they left. And then there's some of them that left Virginia and went to Liberia. When they were having a settlement of Liberia. Yeah. So
wow.
it's eye opening. You know.
Yeah, very much so. Hallelujah. Well, Auntie, we have been talking for a little bit. So,
Yeah, and I want to give my station is called Anita Talks Genealogy. Anita Talks History and Genealogy. That's my YouTube channel. Yeah.
okay. And, again, any other contact information as well,
Hmm.
I'll put it
Yeah.
in the description. Um, any final thoughts, Auntie, before we
Yeah.
wrap up our
Yeah.
conversation? It's been
My
beautiful.
books are available through Amazon.com. Um, and
Yes,
also,
please hold up the books. You have some of your books with you.
yeah,
Yeah,
here's one
yeah.
of them, Along the Rappahannock. That's one of my books. This is Pieces of the Quilt, the Mosaic of an African American Family. Um, and this is my last book, and it's called Minkwa Unami Okihoking and the Downriver Nations. And it is about the natives. I decided I want to write a book about all of the native ancestry that I found in our family. And so this is it. It's about who they were, what tribes they belonged to, how they got together, and you know, um, just their accomplishment and their achievements. Because really, like they didn't just uh, this here. I don't want to take too long, but this lady here, Mamiya Juanita, she is one of our Turtle Island ancestors. This is a mummy. She's in South America. She's an Inca. And when I took my DNA test, uh, she came back as an ancestor. So this is from 1540, when they found her, um, she was mummified. They said because she had died, she was young when she died, but her name is Mumia Juanita, and she connects us to the Inca in South America. And this was from another DNA test that I took called CGI. You know, it's a genetics testing. You know, but people don't have to do all what I did because I do it just because I'm curious. But a lot of people don't want to do that, and if you don't feel comfortable doing it, then don't do it. I wouldn't suggest that you do it.
Wow. And you know what? And before we close, I do have to um, just share, like when you give your little the snippets of history on your
Hmm.
channel. You know, one in particular was when you were talking about um, was it at one? Is he our? He's an uncle. I think he's a great uncle. But William Chester Ruth, you know
Yes,
how he became a millionaire. And I did a little bit more looking into, because I did look up his the ebony. You know, I looked at the
article.
old article on ebony, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But and he could pass too. Like he was,
Yes, yes.
but he wasn't passing.
His
And
grandmother, his grandmother was our. She would be your great grandmother. She was my great grandmother. She was my mother's great grandmother.
yes,
She
okay.
um she's the one that was brought from Africa. That's his
Mm.
grandmother. His
Oh, yes, yes, that's who
Yeah,
you were
and
saying. Yes.
his grandfather was the white man that owned her, Robert Ruth. And so my DNA, when I go on Ancestry DNA, and Robert Ruth's descendants who are on Ancestry contact us. They're our cousins. And
Wow.
I don't know because I don't. The children were light enough to pass, and some of the children she had passed. So some of these people that are coming on, they may be white, but they may be some of the children who are passing. Their
Yeah.
descendants. I
Yeah.
don't know
I
because
saw that.
they choose whether they want to talk to you or not. They don't. They'll say, "Oh, are you a descendant of Robert Bruce?" And I'll say yes, and they say, "Oh," and that's the last thing I hear. I don't hear nothing else from them. So you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. But I did see that they started a foundation where he has like they um he has like a museum per se, like
in
and
Lancaster.
yes,
Mhm.
yeah. And so I'm like, wow, that
Yeah,
that was pretty cool to sit, to see. And I'm
yeah.
like, wow, he was such an inventor, and the picture in ebony, he wouldn't even show the whole thing because they would always, like how they did with many of our inventions. They, we
Yes.
did it, they hit it type thing. But so he was holding up some piece of some kind of invention. I guess it was some kind of
Mhm.
airplane type, but he didn't. He was like, "No, you can't even see the whole thing. You
Right.
just go see
Right.
a piece here in this picture." Yeah, you know.
Because his father, great grandfather Samuel Ruth, was also inventing. His father was a blacksmith, and when he worked, he would create his own tools, and people were stealing them. So Chester, when he started, he said that people were stealing his inventions, and he stopped telling them until he would get his patent. He figured out how to get a patent uh, because he had he created a part, invented a part for the Trident missile, but he could not talk about what it was, what the part was. But he had a contract because when he was smart enough to say, okay, so I'm in, I'm going, you can use it, but I'm going to do it. That's why he had his he had his own, um, he was the only African American in the community that was creating, that had his own factory, that his own thing where he was making the pieces, the parts for the Trident missile. So all of that was confidential. He could not talk about it, but I think they wrote about it in the Ebony magazine. But I lost my cover that I had of him, so send me a copy of it. I don't have the cover anymore. I can't hear you. You're you're muted.
Sorry. I said I looked it up. It's on the e-library where they have the digital copy of the periodicals. That's how I found
Oh,
it, but I'll
okay.
send you the link. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it was,
yeah,
I pulled up
yeah,
Ebony and then I put in the search terms. Um
yeah.
and that's how I found it. Yeah. So
Okay.
yes, but
That's
yeah.
good. It's online. I'm glad that it's online too. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So again, thank you so, so much, Auntie, for availing
Thank
yourself.
you.
Yes, yes. And you know, maybe we'll be able to have another conversation because there's
I
a
hope so. Because
yeah,
I
yeah,
only
because I
told
know
you half of what, I only gave you half the information. There's a whole lot more. There's,
we
so much.
literally just
Yeah,
scratched the surface because I know I had
yeah,
and I don't want us to keep going in a tangent, but I know um I had found some information. I was watching something about the Melungeons, and then I saw you had something about that, but I'm not gonna go
yeah,
there. We're not gonna continue, maybe after this call,
yeah,
but it, yeah, and that whole I didn't even know nothing about but I'm like, man, like
right.
it was it was consistent land grabs. So I
Yes.
mean, that was just another example um of things I'm learning as well. But thank you so, so much. And
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so glad to see you and hear from you.
you
You
too.
know,
Yeah,
I haven't seen you in a
Auntie.
couple of years.
I know, right? Yeah, yes, yes, ma'am. And before that, it was way too long, way too long.
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
So again, thank you, all of you, for watching. And please share your thoughts, leave your comments, and also look for this conversation on both of our channels. Um,
Mhm.
Leave your comments if there's anything that anything further you want to share. Please do so, and we'll do our best to get back to you. Y'all willing.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Appreciate you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Auntie. And thank you all
Bye.
for watching. Stay on the line, but all right,
Okay.
y'all. Till the next time.
Okay.